Guinevere's eyes flooded with unrelenting hate. The beast within was claiming her again. She shivered. For years, she had thought it vanquished, but like so many other great terrors, this one could never hope to be smote by cold steel. What happened next was something that no soul within that abandoned house would ever forget. The floor around her began to ooze a thick, black liquid that consumed the members of Helena's cult. Spiny, undulating coils darted up through the earthen floor, wrenching and tearing at their hapless victims.
What the hell is that?
Crow gasped.
Ancient nature magic,
Helena replied. The mechanist leader did not wait for the blood-curdling screams of agony from her men, as their bodies slowly dissolved into the black sludge.
Helena! Please! Help us!
Crow cried, as his arm began to slide off of the bone. Helena took one last look at Guinevere, then stared at him apathetically.
help yourselves,
She hissed, and dashed away from the gruesome goop. The last cries and screams of the doomed men fell silent within seconds. Garrett stared wide-eyed at Guinevere as her body softened, and came to rest in a broken heap upon the floor. He had a look of blank horror stamped on his face.
Guinevere, what did you do?
Before she could explain, the thief turned on his heel. Retrieving the satchel that Ryan had left on the table and his fumbling, he cleared his throat. Guinevere slunk to his side like a beaten dog.
Clock tower. Now.
Garrett and Guinevere walked towards the clock tower in silence. The world was an unreal hue of blue, casting purple shadows across the expanse of the city. The shy girl looked over to her mentor as he continued to walk, staring blankly ahead, a firm frown on his face. He was obviously angry with her. He had good reason to be. Guinevere decided that it would be wise not to address him until he was ready to talk about whatever troubled him so. She knew that he would eventually bring it up. The sun rose just as the two rounded the last alley and approached the steps of the Grand Tower. 3 members of the City Watch were lurking about, which never ceased to surprise the young woman. When did they sleep? Garrett put his arm around her protectively, pulling her along as he dashed from shadow to shadow and into the sheltering grips of his abode. Once he was sure that they were safe, the thief looked downward at his apprentice. Guinevere returned the gaze and felt the bundle of nerves in her stomach start to unravel. Maybe he wasn't so mad at her after all.
Garrett, I'm so relieved. I thought that you were upset with me.
She beamed. But as her smile grew wider, she suddenly became quite aware that she was wrong. Her thief looked away and started walking up the winding stairway. Garrett was beyond thoughts. Everything around him seemed to be warping into chaos. The mechanists were back. Helena, one of his greatest threats from the underworld, was their leader. Orion was in on it somehow. His Guinevere had just viciously and unnaturally slaughtered a handful of people. The thief slammed the trapdoor shut beneath Guinevere. She could tell that he was very upset, but she had no idea why. She meekly shuffled her feet and looked down to the patterns in the wood of the floorboards. Pilfer's eyes began to glow green as glass as his mistress entered the dingy domain. Garrett cleared his throat and exhaled a long sigh, and she perked up.
Guinevere, why did you kill those people tonight?
He asked sharply.
Garrett, I can explain.
She pleaded.
It was part of my power. I used...
I know that you can use magic, Guinevere. That doesn't mean you should be so quick to kill.
What would you have me do then? Just let them kill you first?
She retorted in one of her very rare, rebellious bouts.
Usually, I would say that being surrounded like that constitutes killing, yes. It was obviously them or us, and we were outnumbered.
The thief glared at her with a look that made Guinevere want to cower.
But I'm with you right now. A pagan witch. A witch who possesses great skill using the forces of magic.
Garrett,
I'm not finished, Guinevere. You could have used that sleep hex you used back at the House of Blossoms, or even a less potent attack, but this...
His thoughts returned to the grisly remains of bone and black sludge. The thief suddenly became very silent.
I told you once before, I don't work with killers. I thought that was clear.
It was. It's just...
Guinevere was now borderline hysterical. She did not like the way this conversation was going. Before she could explain, Garrett spun around and looked her dead in the eyes. There was a deep torment within that peculiar metal eye, and it sank the young woman's heart into an unwielding torrent of darkness.
I thought I could trust you.
Guinevere looked away from him, her body unmoving. She felt as if her heart was in a meat grinder.
I lost control. That doesn't mean you can't trust me.
She retorted desperately, tears welling up within the corners of her doe-like eyes.
Oh really? Suppose one of those pools of black goop was to hit me.
I already told you. Magic doesn't work that way. I would never will my spells to harm you, Garrett. I love you.
His eyes widened as the thief recoiled back at her confession. Guinevere gasped, realizing her words far too late. Face flushed with embarrassment, her green eyes fell to the floor. Garrett just continued to stare at her. Love. That was a word that he hadn't heard uttered from a woman's lips in what felt like years, and a feeling that he thought he would never experience again. His remaining amber eye glistened with desire at her beauty and bold words.
Guinevere? Is that how you really feel?
He inquired, more tenderly than he would have liked. Guinevere blushed uncontrollably at his words. The thief felt as his heart leapt wildly at the lush pink that lit up her cheeks. What had happened that night still sent chills down his spine, and yet Garrett found himself feeling strangely proud. While Guinevere could have handled the situation more tactfully, she had done it for the same reason she had back in the air shaft. To protect him.
Of course I do.
She grinned with childlike delight.
Guinevere, despite the aforementioned, your means were not without an end. I now understand why you did what you did. However,
Guinevere gasped as Garrett grabbed her and pulled her into his awaiting body.
I think your next lesson needs to be in subtlety. You can be a bit showy.
He mused dryly.
I know. I'm sorry. I can't always help it.
What do you mean?
Guinevere straightened her posture and tried to smile. As hard as it was, she knew that she had to tell him.
Garrett?
Yeah?
Do you ever have voices inside your head?
Garrett's expression drooped instantly, and a worried frown appeared upon his weathered face.
Voices? What kind of voices?
Well, they tell me to do certain things. but I can't always fully comprehend what they're saying. They speak funny.
Alright. Can you give me an example of this funny speaking?
The thief responded, growing progressively more alarmed.
They tell me to... Oh, this is going to sound silly.
She stopped.
Humor me.
Garrett grinned.
They tell me to take revenge against the evils of this city. To devour man flesh? I don't know what that is, but lately I've been having a weird craving for it.
Upon hearing her speak these words, Garrett's face contorted in fear. He trembled, feeling as his heart sank to his knees.
Guinevere, that's...
He stared at her, unsure how to word the unrelenting turmoil that was going through his mind. Regardless of how he felt about her, this girl was a pagan. She would always have such thoughts, such animal-like tendencies. He shook his head. He couldn't allow such blatant bigotry to get the better of him. If there was one thing Guinevere was good at, it was adapting. Rising up to better herself and conquer her greatest hurdles. He was her teacher. It was his job, nay, his desire, to assist her in that odyssey.
Garrett, did I say something bad?
She asked, nervous at what his answer might be.
These voices. Did they tell you to kill the mechanists tonight?
Yes.
Guinevere, what specifically did they tell you? I need to know, word for word. Part of my training as a keeper was to decipher hidden messages. If this truly is pagan influence, then I may be able to help you. A bit, anyway. Only pagans can fully understand pagan talk, after all.
He grumbled.
They said, blood sacrifice.
The thief rolled his eyes with a huff.
Lovely.
Garrett, please. You've got to help me. I want them to stop.
She desperately grabbed at his chest, her eyes overflowing with sappy, yellow tears. The thief was a little unnerved by this, but he did not let her go.
Guinevere, what would you have me do?
I want it out of me. I don't want this festering urge coming between my training any longer. Between us. To lose your trust would bring the deepest realms of my nightmares to life. There's no pain more excruciating, no terror more chilling, no divot more deep and hollow than the state of my soul upon your departure. These monsters inside of me are thirsting even now for human blood and death. These are only with creatures. They cares nothing for man, fools.
Guinevere shook her head violently as she caught herself slipping into pagan dialect.
Until I met you. You alone are what keeps me whole. Keeps me from retaliating against the modern world and all of its foul ugliness. Without you, Garrett, gods have mercy on what I would become.
Garrett's mind now screamed with emotion. The young woman before him was sincere. He knew that even the trickster himself could never feign such a guise. Guinevere wanted this to end. She struggled with this thing on a daily basis. If she truly was possessed by some sort of pagan spirit, the thief wasn't going to allow it to take up permanent residence. One way or another, he would find a way to drive it out of her. A deep-rooted feeling burst forth with primeval prowess. Garrett's firm lips pressed deeply into hers, passion swirling through his heart and enveloping his head in a dense, orange mist. When he finally pulled away, he gave his apprentice a genuine look of intent.
I will admit, most of that sounded like more crazy pagan talk. But that last part...
He could not fight off his feelings, no matter how much they interfered with his work. He loved Guinevere too, and he could dabble in their affair no longer. She was a precious jewel, and he had to have her all to himself.
My Guinevere, I will do everything in my power to help you.